pregnant beggar asked for scraps at the luxury restaurant. The millionaire owner's reaction changed her life forever. The fine drizzle of March fell over the downtown streets when Elena stopped in front of the Belle Époque restaurant. Her hands were shaking, not just from the cold that seeped through the holes in her tattered coat, but from the fear of what she was about to do. 7 months pregnant, her protruding belly was impossible to hide, even under the layers of donated clothes she wore. Elena was 28, but looked much older. Life on the streets ages you fast. Her face, once beautiful, now carried the marks of sleepless nights, constant hunger, and an endless exhaustion. Her brown hair, pulled into a messy ponytail, was damp from the mist. She looked at the restaurant's illuminated window and felt her stomach churn. She didn't know if it was from hunger or shame. Inside the Belle Époque, everything gleamed. The tables were covered with immaculate white linen, the silver cutlery sparkling under the light of crystal chandeliers, and wine glasses clinking as well-dressed patrons made toasts. It was a world completely different from the one Elena had inhabited for nearly a year. A year. It felt like a lifetime since everything had fallen apart. Elena had been a custodian at a local hospital, earning just enough to afford a cheap room on the rough side of town. Then came the relationship with Jake, a man who promised to care for her, who spoke sweet words and made plans for the future. When Elena discovered she was pregnant, Jake vanished. He simply disappeared, taking the little money she had saved with him. Unable to pay the rent, Elena was evicted. She tried to go back to her mother's place upstate, but the call went to voicemail. She would later discover, through a neighbor, that her mother had passed away 3 months earlier. Alone, without family, broke, and without references to secure another job, Elena found herself on the street, pregnant and homeless. The first days were the worst. Sleeping on sidewalks, waking up with her body aching, begging for spare change or food. Some people offered help, others averted their eyes in disgust. Her belly grew, and with it, her despair. How could she care for a baby under these conditions? On that Tuesday night, Elena was particularly famished. She had only eaten a stale piece of bread a bakery was throwing out 2 days ago. The baby stirred inside her, as if feeling the lack of sustenance too. That's when she remembered advice another unhoused woman had given her. Try the fancy restaurants late at night. Sometimes they give out the leftovers. That's why she was here, standing in front of the Belle Époque, gathering her courage. The glass door seemed like an impassable barrier between two worlds. Elena took a deep breath, automatically cradled her stomach in a protective gesture, and pushed the door open. The warmth of the room enveloped her immediately. The sound of lively conversations, the scent of exquisite cuisine, the clinking of china. A few patrons turned their heads when she entered, and Elena felt the weight of every gaze. She knew how she must look: dirty, wet, and obviously out of place. Mark, the restaurant manager, was 35 and took his position very seriously. To him, the Belle Époque was more than a workplace. It was a symbol of status. He had come from humble beginnings himself and built his career through sheer effort. Perhaps that was why he was so rigid in maintaining the establishment standards. When he saw Elena enter, his face tightened into an immediate expression of displeasure. "Excuse me, ma'am, but this establishment is for paying customers only," he said, walking swiftly toward her, trying to block her passage into the main dining room. Elena felt the words catch in her throat. Her voice came out low, almost a whisper. I just wanted to know if you had any food scraps. Anything at all. Please." The words cost her more than Mark could imagine. Elena never thought she would reach the point of begging for leftovers. But here she was, with a baby growing inside her, starving with no options left. Mark glanced around, worried about the impression this would make on the clientele. Some were already watching the scene with curiosity. "No, we don't have anything," he replied dryly. "And I need to ask you to leave. You are disturbing our guests." Tears began to form in Elena's eyes. She looked at the tables, at the food left on the plates, at the bread many hadn't even touched. So much food here, and she was asking only for the scraps. "Please," she insisted, knowing she was humiliating herself, but too desperate to care. "I'm 7 months pregnant. I've barely eaten in 2 days. I just need a little bit of—" "I already told you we don't have anything for you," Mark cut her off, slightly raising his voice. He took her arm, not violently, but firmly, attempting to usher her back toward the door. "Please, don't make me call security." It was at that moment that Robert Sterling walked out of his second-floor office. Robert was 58 and owned a small chain of upscale restaurants, with the Belle Epoque being his favorite, the first he had opened 25 years ago. He was a tall man with impeccably cut gray hair, always dressed in tailored suits. His brown eyes, however, held an expression different from the coldness his imposing demeanor might suggest. There was an old sadness in them, a void that all the money in the world had failed to fill. Robert had built his empire through hard work. He came from a poor family, starting as a dishwasher at 15, learning all the secrets of the kitchen, saving every penny, studying business administration at night. When he finally opened his first restaurant, he swore he would make it the best, offering not just food but an unforgettable experience. Success came, money came, but happiness did not follow. His 30-year marriage had ended 5 years ago when his wife, Vera, decided she preferred the company of a younger venture capitalist. His daughter, Patricia, Patty, 32, had distanced herself, siding with her mother in the divorce. Robert found himself alone in a mansion that was too big, surrounded by luxury but empty inside. Lately, he had been questioning the point of it all. Who was he working so hard for? Why keep accumulating money if he had no one to share it with? The feeling of emptiness was constant, like a hole in his chest that nothing could fill. That night, Robert had decided to personally check on the restaurant's flow. As he descended the stairs, he saw the scene unfolding near the entrance. He saw the pregnant woman, saw Mark trying to get her to leave, saw the patrons watching with a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Something inside Robert stirred. Perhaps it was the memory of his own mother, who had also gone hungry when he was a child. Perhaps it was the sight of that woman, pregnant and on the street, that touched a nerve he thought was dormant. Or perhaps it was simply the right moment, when a person's soul is ready to do something that transcends logic. "Mark!" Robert's voice echoed through the dining room, firm but calm. "What is happening here?" The manager turned, clearly surprised by his boss's presence in the dining room at that hour. "Mr. Sterling, this person came in asking for food, and I was explaining that she couldn't eat here?" Robert finished, walking toward them. His eyes met Elena's, and something passed between them. A recognition, the perception of souls who, despite living in completely different worlds, understood pain. Elena lowered her gaze, ashamed. She wanted to disappear, wanted the earth to swallow her whole. Robert stopped beside Mark and looked intently at Elena. He saw the prominent belly, the trembling hands, the eyes red from crying and exhaustion. Above all, he saw the dignity she tried to maintain despite everything. "Look at her condition," Robert said, his voice soft but weighted with emotion. "She deserves more than scraps." The silence that followed was heavy. Everyone in the restaurant was paying attention now. Mark looked confused, unsure how to react. Robert turned to the manager. "Mark, prepare table number 7, the best table in the house." "Sir." Mark blinked, incredulous. "Table 7. For our guest." Robert gestured toward Elena, who was paralyzed, unable to believe what she was hearing. "But sir, she is a pregnant woman who needs a proper meal." Robert cut in, his tone making it clear there would be no discussion. "And I will personally prepare the food for her." Murmurs spread through the dining room. Some guests looked shocked, others moved. Elena remained still, tears now flowing freely down her face. "Sir, I can't," she began, her voice thick with emotion. Robert approached her and gently touched her shoulder. "Yes, you can. Come with me." He led her to table 7, located near a large window overlooking the illuminated inner garden. It was indeed the best table in the restaurant. Elena sat on the plush seat, her hands timidly touching the white linen, afraid of getting it dirty. "Don't worry," Robert said, noticing her discomfort. "We wash linens. You are going to eat well tonight." And then, to the astonishment of Mark and the staff watching from the kitchen doorway, Robert Sterling, one of the region's most successful businessmen, walked into the kitchen and began to cook. It wasn't something he had done frequently in recent years. He had specialized chefs for that. But Robert had never forgotten his roots, never lost his love for cooking, for the simple act of preparing food with his own hands. That night, he prepared a feast. He started with a creamy pumpkin and ginger soup, perfect for warmth and comfort. Then, he prepared a mushroom risotto using fresh ingredients, seasoned with precision. To accompany it, he sautéed seasonal vegetables in butter and herbs. For dessert, a classic panna cotta with caramel sauce, smooth and sweet. While cooking, Robert felt alive in a way he hadn't in years. There was purpose in every motion, meaning in every spice added. He wasn't just cooking to feed a hungry body. He was cooking to nourish a soul. The dishes were served one by one to Elena, who ate slowly, savoring every forkful as if it were the most precious thing in the world. And it was. Every bite wasn't just food. It was restored dignity, recognized humanity, renewed hope. Robert watched from a distance, and with every plate that returned empty from the table, he felt his own emptiness diminish slightly. When she finished the dessert, he approached her again. "Was it good?" he asked, knowing the answer but wanting to hear it anyway. Elena looked at him with eyes bright with tears. "It was the best meal of my life," she said, her voice choked. "I don't know how to thank you. You can't imagine what this means to me." Robert pulled up a chair and sat across from her. Something about this woman intrigued him. It wasn't pity he felt. It was genuine curiosity, a desire to know her story. "Tell me," he said, "how did you end up in this situation?" And Elena told him. She talked about Jake, the pregnancy, the eviction, her mother's death, the nights on the street. She spoke with painful sincerity, without self-pity, just stating the facts as they were. Robert listened in silence, and with every word, he identified more with the extraordinary strength he saw in her. The strength to keep going, even when everything is lost. When she finished, Robert was silent for a moment, processing everything he had heard. A decision was forming in his mind, a decision that would surprise even himself. "And when the baby is born?" he asked. "Do you have a plan?" Elena lowered her gaze. "I don't know," she admitted. "I try not to think about it too much because when I do, I panic. How will I care for a baby on the street? How will I feed him, provide medicine, diapers? Sometimes I think about—" She stopped, her voice failing. "Sometimes I think about putting him up for adoption. But then I feel him move inside me, and I can't imagine separating from him." Her hand automatically went to her belly, a protective gesture Robert recognized. There was love there, pure, unconditional love even in the worst circumstances. "What if there was a way for you to raise your son?" Robert heard himself saying. "A way to have an income, a safe place, a chance to start over?" Elena looked at him, not daring to believe. "What do you mean, sir?" Robert took a deep breath, gathering the courage to verbalize the decision he had just made. "I want to offer you a job here at the restaurant. Nothing too strenuous, something you can manage even while pregnant. Kitchen prep, organization, light cleaning. When the baby is born, we'll figure out a solution. Maybe even a nursery area here. The important thing is that you'll have a fixed income, a purpose, a new beginning." The silence that followed was charged with emotion. Elena stared at him with a mixture of disbelief and hope so intense it hurt. "Are you serious?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Completely," Robert confirmed. "Everyone deserves a second chance. You and your baby deserve a chance at a dignified life." Tears streamed down Elena's face again, but these were different. They were tears of relief, gratitude, and a hope she thought was lost forever. "I don't know what to say," she sobbed. "I will work so hard. I'll do everything you ask. I know." Robert interrupted her with a gentle smile. Something tells me you will do very well. And that is how a decision made on an impulse of compassion changed the course of 2 lives that March night. Robert didn't know it yet, but by reaching out to Elena, he was also reaching out to himself, offering them both a second chance to find meaning and purpose. Have you ever been through such a difficult moment that you thought there was no way out? That feeling that the whole world has turned its back on you? Elena was at rock bottom, but something extraordinary was about to begin in her life, and perhaps in Robert's life too. If you are enjoying this story, leave a comment. Second chance. And tell me, what would you do if you saw a pregnant person begging for food? Hit like. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. Because the story of these 2 is just beginning, and what lies ahead will touch your heart in ways you can't imagine. The following Monday dawned differently for Elena. For the first time in nearly a year, she woke up in a safe place. Robert had secured a spot for her in a shelter that partnered with one of his charities. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, warm, and safe. Elena had a bed, a bathroom to use, and the promise of a future. She arrived at the Belle Epoque at 6 in the morning as agreed. She wore clean clothes Robert had also provided, simple but appropriate. She still couldn't fully believe it was happening, afraid she would wake up and discover it had just been a cruel dream. But it was real, very real. Mark received her at the back door of the restaurant, still visibly uncomfortable with the situation. He had not approved of Robert's decision, but he didn't have the final say. You will initially work in the prep area, he explained, coldly professional. Washing vegetables, organizing ingredients, keeping the workspace clean. Nothing that requires too much physical exertion, given your condition. Elena nodded enthusiastically. Understood. I'll do everything right. The kitchen at the Belle Epoque was a world apart. Enormous, modern, with equipment Elena had never seen before. There were 6 permanent kitchen staff, led by Chef Andre, a robust man in his 40s with a well-groomed reddish beard and a temper that could be both warm and explosive, depending on the day. When Mark introduced Elena, there was an awkward silence. Everyone knew the story, the unusual circumstances of her hiring. Some looked at her with sympathy, others with skepticism. So you're our new prep assistant, Andre said, evaluating Elena with experienced eyes. Welcome. We work hard here, but we also look out for each other. If you're not feeling well at any point, you let me know. Got it. Got it, Elena replied, grateful for the kindness in his tone. The first few days were difficult, not because of the work itself, which Elena embraced with all the enthusiasm she could muster, but because of the adjustment. She wasn't used to being part of a team, having a routine, interacting with people. Nearly a year on the streets had made her suspicious, always on alert, always expecting the worst. There was also Clarice, the 38-year-old sous chef, who looked at Elena with evident disapproval from the start. Clarice was a meticulous perfectionist who had worked hard to get where she was. To her, Elena's hiring was an unacceptable breach of protocol. This isn't a charity shelter. Elena heard her comment to another employee one day. People should earn their place on merit, not pity. The words hurt, but Elena swallowed her pride and worked even harder. She arrived before everyone else, stayed late if necessary, and didn't complain about any task, no matter how humble. She was determined to prove her worth, not through the pity she inspired, but through the work she delivered. Robert appeared at the restaurant almost every day. He always found a way to stop by the kitchen, checking on how Elena was adapting. These brief visits became her favorite moments of the day. There was something comforting about his presence, a security she hadn't felt in a long time. "How's it going?" he would ask, and there was always genuine interest in his voice. "Well, very well," Elena would reply, and it was true. For the first time in so long, she had hope. Weeks passed. Elena gained confidence, learning the rhythms of the kitchen, understanding the processes. She discovered she liked the environment, the smell of food being prepared, the energy of a team working in sync. And slowly, the team began to make space for her. Andre especially proved to be an unexpected ally. He himself had a history of overcoming challenges, having recovered from alcoholism through his dedication to the kitchen. Perhaps that was why he identified with Elena. "You have a knack for this," he commented one day, watching her dice onions with increasing precision. "Have you ever thought about learning to cook seriously?" Elena looked at him, surprised. "Me? But I don't have the education for that." "The kitchen isn't just learned in culinary school," Andre smiled. "It's learned by doing, observing, feeling. If you want, I can teach you a few things." And so began a new phase in Elena's learning. During breaks, Andre taught her basic techniques, let her expiry, meant and corrected her patiently. Elena was a dedicated student, absorbing everything like a sponge. Robert observed this development with increasing satisfaction. That impulsive decision to help Elena had turned out to be one of the best choices he'd made in a long time. But it was more than that. There was something else, something he couldn't name yet. Seeing Elena flourish, seeing her confidence return, seeing the smile appear more and more on her face, it filled a void within him. It made him feel like his life had purpose again. It was on a Saturday afternoon, 2 months after Elena's hiring, that Robert had a conversation with her that would change everything. The restaurant rush was over, and the team was finishing cleanup. Robert invited Elena to sit with him in the outside area, where there was a small garden. It was a beautiful day, with a soft late afternoon sun. "The baby must be arriving soon," Robert commented, looking at Elena's now very pronounced belly. "1 more month," she replied, her hand on her stomach. "I'm nervous and excited at the same time." "That's natural. Do you have everything ready? Baby things? Clothes? A crib?" Elena lowered her eyes, a little embarrassed. "I'm scraping together every dollar. I've bought a few things from thrift stores, but there's still a lot missing." Robert was silent for a moment, thoughtful. Then he made another decision. "I have a proposal for you. I have a guest cottage on the grounds of my property. I don't use it for anything. It's been vacant for years. How about moving in there?" Elena stared at him, speechless. "Mr. Sterling, Robert. Call me Robert. Robert, I can't accept that. You've already done so much for me. It wouldn't be fair." "Look, let's be practical," he interrupted her, his tone allowing no argument. "You're going to have a baby soon. The shelter is good, but it's not an ideal place for a new mother. The guest cottage has 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room, everything you need. The sitting there empty, while you're in a cramped place. That doesn't make sense." "But," "No buts. Tomorrow we'll go look at the house. If you like it, it's yours. We'll consider it part of your employment package." Elena felt the tears threatening to fall again. This man, who was a complete stranger 2 months ago, was changing her life in ways she never imagined possible. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked, her voice low. "I don't understand. Why me?" Robert was silent for a long moment, looking at the garden, at the flowers swaying gently in the breeze. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with emotion. "Because when I looked at you that day, asking only for scraps, I saw my mother. I saw the times she went hungry so I could eat. I saw the times she begged for help and received none. And I thought, if someone had reached out to her, how different our lives could have been." He paused. "And also because I'm tired of living in a huge, empty house, surrounded by things but alone. Helping you makes me feel like my life has some purpose beyond just making money." They were simple words, but weighted with deep truth. Elena felt a connection form, an understanding that went beyond boss and employee. There was the beginning of something neither of them could yet name. The following Sunday, Robert took Elena to see the guest cottage. It was a charming, 2-story structure located at the back of the main property. It had been built for Robert's parents to live in, but they had passed away before moving in. Since then, the house had remained empty. When Elena entered, she felt as if she were in a dream. The house was beautiful, airy, with large windows that let in plenty of light. It had a living room, a full kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom. It was a little dusty from disuse, but nothing a good cleaning wouldn't fix. "Here it is," Robert said. "What do you think?" Elena couldn't answer. She started to cry, sobbing loudly, all the emotions of the past few months spilling out at once. Hey, Robert approached, concerned. What is it? Don't you like it? I love it, she managed to say through sobs. It's perfect. It's more than I ever dreamed of having. I can't believe this is happening. 3 months ago, I was sleeping on a sidewalk, and now I'm here, in this beautiful house with a job with hope for the future. How can this be real? Robert smiled, his own eyes stinging. It is real, and you deserve it. You and your baby deserve to have a home. The following week, with the help of some restaurant staff, Elena moved into the guest cottage. Robert provided basic furniture: a bed, a sofa, a table, and a new crib for the baby. Esther, a 62-year-old woman who had worked as a housekeeper in Robert's main house for 20 years, offered to help Elena organize everything. Esther was a kind woman, with an easy smile and a huge heart. She immediately took Elena under her wing. That man might seem serious, she commented while helping fold baby clothes into a dresser. But he has a heart of gold. He just needed someone to remind him of it. He is an angel, Elena agreed. He literally saved my life. And you are saving his too, you know? Esther looked at her with an enigmatic smile. Since you arrived, it's the first time in years I've seen Mr. Robert truly happy. I see a sparkle in his eyes that I haven't seen since before the divorce. Esther's words echoed in Elena's head. Could it be true? Was she also making a difference in his life? The days began to settle into a good, comforting routine. Elena woke up in her little house, made coffee, walked to the restaurant, which was only 10 minutes from Robert's property, worked her shift, came home, and prepared dinner. On weekends, she tended to the small garden that was flourishing around the house. Robert often stopped by to visit, bringing fresh farmers market produce, books on motherhood, and small gifts. Sometimes they ate dinner together, talking about the day, future plans, about life. A friendship was blossoming, solid and true. A month before the baby was due, Robert organized a small surprise. He arrived at Elena's house one Saturday afternoon with a large box. "What is this?" she asked, curious. "Open it and see." Inside the box as everything. Baby clothes, diapers, bottles, blankets, toys, hygiene products. Everything was top quality, all chosen with care. Elena looked at Robert, deeply moved. "You didn't have to." "I know, but I wanted to." It was a simple moment, but full of meaning. And it was then that Elena realized she was falling in love with Robert, not just out of gratitude for what he had done, but for the man he was, for his genuine kindness, his generosity, the way he treated her with respect and dignity. The thought frightened her. Robert was much older, he was her boss, he was from a completely different world than hers. Besides, she was pregnant by another man, about to have a baby. How could she even consider romantic feelings? Elena decided to keep these feelings to herself. She couldn't risk ruining the one good thing she had in her life. The baby was born on a rainy June morning. Elena was working when she felt the first contractions. Robert was at the restaurant that day, and it was he who rushed her to the hospital. He stayed in the waiting room throughout the labor, as nervous as if he were the father. When the nurse came out and announced it was a boy and that mother and baby were well, Robert felt a joy he hadn't expected. He rushed to the room and found Elena, exhausted but radiant, holding the small baby in her arms. "It's a boy," she said, smiling through her tears. "Everything's fine. He's healthy." Robert approached, and when he looked at that tiny face, something inside him broke and reconstructed at the same time. "Have you chosen a name yet?" he asked. Elena looked at him, her eyes shining. "Gabriel. I'm naming him Gabriel. It means man of God, messenger. I thought it was appropriate, considering how God sent me help when I needed it most." "It's a beautiful name," Robert agreed, feeling his own eyes sting. In the following days, Robert visited the hospital every day. He brought flowers, fruit, talked to Elena, and watched little Gabriel sleep. He was acting like a proud grandfather, and he loved every minute of it. When Elena and Gabriel were discharged, It was Robert who picked them up and drove them back to the guest cottage. In the first few days of adjustment, he often stopped by to see if she needed anything. Esther also became a constant presence, helping with the baby, teaching Elena to breastfeed, to bathe him, all the things a first-time mother needs to learn. Life seemed perfect. Elena had a home, a job, a healthy son, and a support network. For the first time, she dared to dream of the future instead of just surviving the day. But life has a way of complicating even the most beautiful stories. The first cloud on the horizon appeared in the form of Patricia, Robert's daughter. She had heard through neighborhood gossip that her father was supporting a much younger woman, a former homeless person with a baby. The information was distorted, of course, but enough to pique her interest and disapproval. Patricia had her own reasons for keeping a close eye on her father. Since her parents' divorce, she had sided with her mother, mainly because she thought it would secure her inheritance. She had an expensive lifestyle, a husband who didn't earn enough, and counted on her father's money. The idea that another woman might be taking advantage of him infuriated her. One Thursday afternoon, 3 months after Gabriel's birth, Patricia showed up at the Belle Époque. She didn't call ahead. She simply walked in and asked to speak to her father. Robert was in his office when Mark announced his daughter's presence. He came down, surprised. Patricia and he hadn't spoken in months, not since their last argument over money. "Patricia," he greeted her cautiously. "What a surprise. Is everything all right? We need to talk. Alone," she said, casting looks around as if suspecting everyone was listening. They went up to the office. As soon as the door closed, Patricia exploded. "Is it true, Dad? You're bankrolling a young woman who got pregnant by another man? You're caring for a child that isn't yours." Robert took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Where did you hear this? Everyone is talking about it. That you hired a beggar, that she lives on your property, that you act like the baby is yours. You're making a fool of yourself, Dad." "I am helping someone who needed help," Robert replied, feeling his anger rise. "Something you wouldn't understand, since you only think about yourself." "Oh, sure. And when she asks for money, when she claims a share of what is ours, have you thought about that? She is clearly taking advantage of you." "Enough," Robert's voice thundered. "You don't know Elena. You know nothing about her or the situation." "Elena?" Patricia spat the name out disdainfully. "Of course she has a name. Dad, you are being manipulated. Open your eyes." The argument continued, each entrenched in their positions. Patricia was convinced Elena was an opportunist. Robert was furious at his daughter for her cruel and selfish judgment. The conversation ended badly, with Patricia storming out and issuing a veiled threat. "I'm going to find out the truth about this woman. And when I discover she's deceiving you, I hope you remember this conversation." In the following days, Patricia began a private investigation into Elena. She hired a detective to uncover everything about her past, where she lived before, who the baby's father was, if she had a criminal record. She was determined to find something that would expose Elena. Elena, oblivious to all this, continued her life. She balanced work with motherhood, a challenging but rewarding balance. Robert had adjusted her schedule at the restaurant so she could nurse Gabriel regularly. Esther cared for the baby during Elena's working hours. It was an arrangement that worked perfectly, and Elena was infinitely grateful. Gabriel was growing healthy, chubby, a happy baby. Seeing her son so well cared for, well-fed, was a daily miracle for Elena, who still remembered the days when she thought she wouldn't be able to raise a child. But then Patricia's detective discovered something. He found that Jake, Gabriel's father, was actually a wanted criminal. He was involved in a fraud scheme with several victims of his scams, women he seduced and robbed. There was an active arrest warrant for him. Patricia was ecstatic with the discovery. Here was the proof that Elena was of bad character, that she was associated with criminals. She compiled all the information into a dossier and went to confront her father again. "See," she said, throwing the papers on Robert's desk. "Your protégé was partners with a criminal. How can you trust her?" Robert read the documents, his heart sinking, not for the reasons Patricia imagined, but because he could envision the pain Elena felt upon discovering that the man who claimed to love her was a criminal, who had used her. "This proves nothing against Elena," he responded. "She was a victim of this man, not an accomplice." "Oh, of course. You are completely blind." Patricia pounded on the table, frustrated. But it didn't end there. Frustrated at not being able to convince her father, Patricia chose an even more destructive path. She made a copy of the entire dossier and anonymously sent it to Mark, the restaurant manager, along with a letter implying that Elena had hidden a criminal past from Robert, was manipulating her boss, and was an opportunist. Mark, who had never been enthusiastic about Elena's presence, saw this as confirmation of his suspicions. He took the dossier to Clarice, the sous chef who also disapproved of Elena. Together, they began a campaign of whispers and insinuations. "Did you know the father of her baby is a wanted criminal? She must have helped him with the scams. Poor Mr. Robert, he's being conned." The rumors spread through the restaurant staff like wildfire. Within days, Elena began to feel the change. People who had been friendly became cold. Conversations stopped when she entered the room. Suspicious glances followed her. Andre tried to defend her. "You are being unfair. We don't know her side of the story." But his voice was drowned out by the tide of distrust. Elena didn't understand what was happening. Why was everyone suddenly treating her differently? What had she done? Finally, it was Esther who told her the truth. Pitying the young woman, she revealed what was being said, the rumors, the accusations. Elena was devastated, not by what they said about her, but by the pain of seeing everything she had built crumble. And more than that, by the certainty that when Robert found out about Jake, he would think she had lied to him, that she had purposefully hidden it. She needed to speak to Robert before the rumors reached him. She needed to tell the whole truth. She sought Robert out one afternoon, asking to speak privately. They went to his office, and there, with tears streaming down her face, Elena told him everything. About Jake, about discovering who he really was, about the shame, the fear, the feeling of having been used and discarded. "I didn't know anything," she swore. "When I found out he was wanted, he had already disappeared. I was just another victim of his schemes. And I was ashamed, afraid you would think I was involved." Robert listened in silence, processing. Part of him believed her completely, but another part, the part that had been wounded by the treacherous divorce, that had learned to distrust, wondered if he was being manipulated again. "Why didn't you tell me from the beginning?" he asked, his voice weary. "Because I was ashamed," Elena admitted. "Because I already felt humiliated enough being pregnant and homeless. Saying the father of my child was a wanted felon would only increase the humiliation. I wanted to forget that part of my life. It made sense. Logically, it made perfect sense. But Robert was tired, confused, and no longer knew whom to trust. "I need time to process this," he finally said. They were words that shattered Elena's heart. She saw in his expression something she had never seen before, doubt. He doubted her. In the following days, Robert withdrew. He didn't visit the cottage, didn't seek Elena out at the restaurant. The work environment became unbearable. Clarice and Mark, though they said nothing directly, made sure to make Elena's life difficult. They assigned her heavier tasks, offered constant criticism, and socially isolated her. Andre tried to mitigate it, but there was a limit to what he could do. Elena began to break down. The pressure was too much. She woke up every night with nightmares, cried while nursing Gabriel, and questioned if she could continue. The final blow came 2 weeks later when Mark called her into the office. "Elena, we need to talk about your continued employment here at the restaurant." Her heart raced. "What do you mean?" "Your presence has caused division among the staff. There are questions about your past that have not been clarified satisfactorily. We think it's best if you seek other employment opportunities." "You are firing me?" Elena could barely believe it. "Because of rumors?" "They are not just rumors, Elena. There are facts. The father of your child is a criminal. You withheld important information when you were hired." "I didn't withhold anything because no one ever asked me." she defended herself, desperate. And I have nothing to do with his crimes. I was a victim. Unfortunately, the decision has been made. You have 2 weeks to find another place. And, obviously, you will also need to vacate the guest cottage. The house. They were taking the house too. They were taking everything. Elena stumbled out of that office. She couldn't believe it. In a matter of days, everything had crumbled. The job, the house, Robert's trust. Everything. She tried to speak with Robert, but he didn't answer her calls. She tried to go to the main house, but the entrance was closed. It was as if he had placed a wall between them. Desperate, unsure what to do, Elena packed her bags. She wouldn't wait the 2 weeks. She wouldn't stay where she was no longer welcome. She picked up Gabriel, her few belongings, and left in the middle of the night. She returned to the shelter where she had lived before. Fortunately, there was a vacancy, but she was back where she started. Worse than the beginning because now she had a baby to care for. Esther found out about Elena's departure the next morning and rushed to tell Robert. "Sir, do you know she left? In the middle of the night, with the baby, without talking to anyone." Robert felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "She left. She did. And do you know why? Because Mark fired her. That Mark, with support from that jealous Clarice. They said it was your decision." "What?" Robert stood up, furious. "I didn't authorize any firing." The truth began to reveal itself. Mark, encouraged by Patricia who continued her manipulations, had made the decision alone, lying to Elena that it was Robert's order. Robert was beside himself with rage. But more than rage, he felt guilt. For withdrawing, for allowing doubt to triumph over trust, for failing to protect Elena when she needed it most. He ran to the guest cottage. Empty, desolate. Only a few forgotten things remained. The crib he had bought with such care, some small clothes scattered on the floor. He sat on the bed that had been hers and let the tears roll. What had he done? How had he let this happen? And now? How did such a beautiful story reach this point of pain? Elena lost everything again. Robert realized too late, and an innocent baby was caught in the middle of the storm. Was there still a chance to mend what was broken? Could the truth overcome the lies? If your heart is heavy, if you're rooting for Elena and Robert to find their way back, leave a comment. Truth. Also tell me, do you think Robert should have trusted Elena more? Hit like, subscribe to the channel because what comes next is the moment everything will be decided. And I promise you won't want to miss it. The next morning was the most difficult of Robert's life. He had spent the entire night sleepless, thinking, processing, hating himself for the way he treated Elena. For the first time in a long time, he looked at himself with brutal honesty and didn't like what he saw. He had become exactly the type of person he judged. Someone who let fear, distrust, and the influence of others dictate his actions. Someone who, when he most needed to offer support, withdrew. He skipped breakfast. He went straight to the restaurant, arriving before everyone else opened up. When Mark arrived, he found Robert sitting in his office, his face so grim it signaled a storm. "Mr. Sterling, what a surprise to see you so early. Sit down." Robert cut him off, his tone glacial. Mark sat, uncomfortable. "You fired Elena." It wasn't a question. It was an affirmation. Mark swallowed hard. "Sir, I thought it was best for the restaurant. After we discovered her past, about the child's father. And who gave you the authority to make that decision?" Robert's voice was low, controlled, but charged with fury. "Who said you could fire an employee without my approval? I thought you would agree. You were withdrawing from her, so I assumed." "You assumed wrong." Robert stood up, imposing. "You lied to her, saying the firing came from me. You manipulated the situation, spread gossip, created a hostile environment. And all based on what? On judgment, on half-truths, on prejudice." "Sir, I was just trying to protect the restaurant." "Protect you? From what, Mark? From a woman who was working honestly, caring for her son, trying to rebuild her life." Robert slammed his hand on the desk. "You are fired. Gather your things and leave my establishment." Mark paled. Sir, please, now. And you will not receive a single penny beyond what is legally mandated. Don't even think about asking for a reference from me. You made a cruel decision based on prejudice, and that has no place here. Mark left the office crestfallen. The news spread quickly through the staff. Clarice was also called into the office. Robert didn't fire her, but he severely reprimanded her for spreading rumors and creating a hostile work environment. He made it clear that any repetition would result in immediate termination. Having done that, Robert set out in search of Elena. He tried the shelter first. Yes, she had arrived with the baby the night before. No, she wasn't there now. She had left early in the morning with Gabriel in her arms and a small bag. No one knew where she had gone. Robert spent the entire day searching. He drove around the city, went to the places he knew she frequented. Nothing. Elena had vanished again into the city's anonymity. In the following days, the search continued. Robert hired people to help look. He even offered a reward for information. But Elena seemed to have disappeared. What Robert didn't know was that Elena had made a decision. Not to run away, but to settle a past debt. She had discovered, through a friend from her hospital days, that Jake had been arrested. He was being held in a neighboring city, awaiting trial. Elena decided to confront him, not out of anger or revenge, but because she needed answers. She needed to look him in the eyes and understand how all this happened. And more importantly, she needed him to sign the documentation acknowledging paternity of Gabriel. If she was going to restart her life, she would do it the right way. The trip to the neighboring city was difficult. Elena used all the money she had saved for the bus fare. She arrived at the jail on a rainy day, Gabriel crying from hunger, she herself exhausted. The meeting with Jake was through glass, using telephones for communication. When he appeared, Elena felt a mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, pity. Jake had changed. He was thinner, his face marked by a life of bad choices. When he saw Elena and the baby, something crossed his eyes. Regret? Shame? Hi, he said through the phone, his voice low. Hi, Elena responded. Steady despite her emotions, they were silent for a moment. So much to say, so hard to start. Is that my son? Jake asked, looking at Gabriel. He is. His name is Gabriel. He's 4 months old. Jake closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. Elena, I am so sorry. For everything. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but it's true. I was a coward, an idiot, Stop. Elena interrupted him. I didn't come here to hear excuses. I came because I need you to sign the papers acknowledging his paternity. And if you have any shred of decency, you'll also sign the document giving up custody. So I can raise my son alone without you showing up years from now trying to interfere in his life. Jake nodded slowly. I'll sign. You're right. I have no right to him. You're a good mother, Elena. Always were much better than me. The documents were processed through a public defender. Jake signed everything. He acknowledged Gabriel as his son but relinquished all rights to custody or visitation. It was a necessary closure. A chapter finally ended. When Elena left the jail, she felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. Gabriel was officially hers, only hers. No one could try to take him away. She returned to the capital on the night bus. Gabriel slept in her arms, and Elena looked out the window, thinking about the future. Where to live, how to raise her son. Going back to Robert was out of the question. He had lost faith in her, or so she thought. What Elena didn't know was that while she was traveling, things were happening. Patricia had visited her father again, this time with her mother, Vera. The two came with an ultimatum. Either Robert completely distanced himself from Elena, or they would take legal action attempting to question his capacity to manage the businesses, claiming he was being manipulated. It was the final straw. Robert confronted the two with a coldness they had never seen. You came here into my house to threaten me? He began, his voice dangerously calm. You, who should be my family, who should support me, come with blackmail? Dad, it's for your own good, Patricia tried. My good. Robert laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. You want to know what's good for me? I'll tell you. Elena was the best thing that has happened in my life in years. She reminded me of what's important, reminded me that life has meaning beyond money. And I, like an idiot, let you plant doubts in my head. That woman is manipulating you, Vera insisted. Enough. Robert slammed his fist on the table. You want to talk about manipulation? Let's talk about you, Vera, who betrayed me after 30 years of marriage. Let's talk about you, Patricia, who only seeks me out when you need money. You two have manipulated me for years, and I let it happen because I still held on to hope for a real family. But it's over. He went to a drawer and pulled out some documents. These are the new directives for my estate. The will has been revised. The majority goes to charities. You, Patricia, will receive enough to live comfortably, but not to squander. The rest goes to those who truly need it. Patricia was livid. You can't do this. I can, and I did. And now get out of my house. You are no longer welcome here. Mother and daughter stormed out, but Robert didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt free. Free from expectations, manipulations, free to live as he wished. But the most important problem remained. Finding Elena. It was Esther who had the idea. Sir, why don't you check the jail? If she's trying to settle things with the baby's father, that's where she went. Robert followed the suggestion. He went to the neighboring city, paid the lawyer who had helped Elena to get information. He discovered she had returned to the capital on the night bus. He rushed to the bus terminal. He arrived in the middle of the night, just as the bus was due to arrive. He waited, nervous, rehearsing what he would say. When Elena stepped off the bus with Gabriel in her arms, exhausted, Robert was the first person she saw. She froze. She hadn't expected to see him there. She didn't know how to react. Robert walked toward her, and Elena saw tears in his eyes. Elena, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I am so sorry. For everything. For doubting you. For withdrawing when you needed me most. For failing to protect you. I was a coward and an idiot. Elena felt her own tears starting to fall. Robert. No, let me finish, he pleaded. You owe me nothing. I owe you everything. You gave me purpose, you gave me joy, you reminded me what it is to be human. And I repaid you with suspicion. But I want to fix this if you'll let me. I want you to come back, you and Gabriel. I want you to have not just a house, but a home. I want to be part of your lives, in whatever way you allow. Why now? Elena asked, needing to understand. What changed? I changed, Robert replied. I finally had the courage to confront who I had become, and I didn't like it. I had the courage to distance myself from the toxic people in my life. I had the courage to realize where true loyalty, true love, lies. Love. The word hung in the air between them. Elena looked at Robert, truly looked. She saw an imperfect man who made mistakes, but who was genuinely remorseful. She saw someone who was willing to fight for her. I'm sorry too, she said, for not trusting you enough to tell you about Jake from the start. For running away instead of fighting. You have nothing to apologize for. Robert shook his head. You were protecting yourself, protecting your son. You did what you thought was right. Gabriel chose that moment to wake up and start crying. Elena automatically rocked him, whispering words of comfort. Robert looked at the two of them, mother and son, and felt his heart overflow. Come home, he asked, pleaded. Please. Elena looked him in the eyes, searching, evaluating. And what she saw there was truth. Truth and love and hope. Okay, she finally said, a small smile appearing. Let's go home. The return to Robert's property was celebrated by Esther, who wept with joy upon seeing the three of them together. The guest cottage was reopened, but now with a different meaning. It wasn't charity. It was family. In the following weeks, life found a new rhythm. Elena returned to work at the restaurant, but now under clear and respectful conditions. Andre was particularly happy with her return. The place wasn't the same without you, he confessed. Robert also made changes to the restaurant. He established clear policies against discrimination and creating a hostile environment. He made a point of personally speaking with every employee about respect and second chances. But the most significant change was happening in the relationship between Robert and Elena. What began as gratitude, then morphed into friendship, was now revealing itself as something deeper. Robert didn't try to rush anything. He knew Elena was still processing everything that had happened, still rebuilding her trust. But he was present every day, showing through actions that his feelings were genuine. It was on a Sunday afternoon, 3 months after the reconciliation, that everything changed. Robert had invited Elena and Gabriel for a picnic in the large garden on the property. It was a beautiful sunny day, the kind of day that begs to be enjoyed. Gabriel, now 7 months old, was starting to sit up on his own. Robert was playing with him, making funny faces that drew giggles from the baby. Elena watched the two of them, her heart warmed. "You're good with him," she commented. Robert looked at her, serious. "It's easy to be good with him. He's an amazing baby. He has an amazing mother." Elena felt her face heat up. "Robert, Elena, I need to tell you something." He took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "I know it might be too soon. I know you might not feel the same, but I can't keep it inside anymore. I love you, and I love this boy as if he were my own. I'm not asking for anything right now. I'm not pressuring you. I just need you to know." The silence that followed was charged. Elena looked at Robert, processing the words, processing her own feelings. "I'm scared," she finally admitted. "Scared of ruining what we have. Scared of not being enough for you. You deserve someone on your level, not a former homeless person with another man's baby. Do you think I care about that?" Robert shook his head, emotional. "Elena, you are the strongest, bravest, most genuine woman I have ever known. You went through things that would destroy most people, and you still have a good heart. How can you not see how special you are?" Tears began to fall down Elena's face. "I love you too," she whispered. "I've been trying to deny it, trying to think it was just gratitude. But it's not. It's real love. You changed my life in so many ways." Robert moved closer, slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. But she didn't. When he kissed her, it was soft, full of promise and hope. Gabriel, nearby, started to laugh and clap his hands, as if approving. The months that followed were a period of building. Robert and Elena were in no hurry. They built their relationship on the solid foundation of friendship, respect, and true love. A year after the day Elena walked into the Belle Époque, asking for scraps. There was a simple but moving wedding in the garden of the property. Only close friends and the restaurant staff were present. Andre was the best man, Esther was the maid of honor, and Gabriel, now 18 months old, was the ring bearer in Esther's arms. Patricia and Vera were not invited. Robert had made peace with the fact that family isn't always blood. Sometimes, family is who we choose, who supports us, who loves us unconditionally. The Belle Époque transformed as well. Robert and Elena started a program called Second Chance, offering jobs and training to people experiencing vulnerability. Many lives were transformed through that program. Elena discovered an incredible talent for cooking. Andre trained her diligently, and she became sous chef 2 years after starting at the restaurant. She had a special gift for creating dishes that were not only delicious but that told stories, that brought comfort to the soul. Gabriel grew up in an environment of love and security. Robert legally adopted him when the boy was 2 years old, and Gabriel started calling him Daddy naturally without being forced. He was a father by heart, which is the truest kind of fatherhood. 5 years after that rainy March night, Elena was in the kitchen of the Belle Époque, supervising dinner on a busy Saturday. She wore a chef's uniform, her hair tucked under a white toque, her face radiant with satisfaction. Gabriel, now 6 years old, was in the waiting area with Robert, doing his school homework while waiting for his mother to finish her shift. It was a scene of normalcy, of family routine, the kind Elena had never imagined possible for herself. When the service ended, Elena took off her uniform and went to meet her family. Robert was helping Gabriel with math, both concentrated over the notebook. "All set?" she asked. All done, Mommy. Gabriel jumped up to hug her. Daddy helped me with the hard sums. And you did very well, Robert praised, ruffling the boy's hair. The three walked out of the restaurant together, strolling through the illuminated gardens toward the house. The guest cottage was no longer where they lived. Robert had insisted, after the wedding, that they live in the main house together as a family. The cottage now served as Elena's office, where she developed new recipes and planned expansions for the Second Chance program. That night, after putting Gabriel to bed, Robert and Elena sat on the terrace, admiring the stars. Do you remember that day? Elena asked, knowing she didn't need to specify which day. Every day, Robert replied, entwining her fingers with his. It was the day my life gained meaning again. I was so scared, Elena confessed. So desperate. I thought I had hit rock bottom. And you had, Robert agreed. But it was down there that our lives met. Two lost people who found each other. Elena rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the peace that only true love brings. Sometimes I still can't believe all this is real. That I have you, that I have a family, a career, such a full life. It is real. Robert kissed the top of her head. And it's only the beginning. We have so many years ahead, so many people to help, so much love to give. And they did. The Second Chance program had already transformed more than 50 lives. Elena gave lectures at universities about overcoming adversity and resilience. Robert had opened 2 new restaurants, all with integrated social programs. But more important than all those achievements was the family they had built. A family based not on obligation or blood, but on choice, on love, on a commitment to be present through the good times and the bad. Gabriel would grow up knowing he had 2 parents who loved him unconditionally. He would grow up seeing that people can change, that second chances exist, that compassion is the greatest gift we can give and receive. The story of Elena and Robert wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was a real story of 2 imperfect people who found a reason in each other to be better. It was about family being built through conscious choice. It was about looking beyond appearances and seeing the essence of people. It was about not giving up when everything seems lost. In the restaurant pantry, still carefully stored, was the old outfit Elena wore on that first night. Robert had asked to keep it, not as a reminder of suffering, but as a celebration of transformation. Occasionally, they looked at that clothing and remembered the journey. We will never forget where we came from, Elena said once. So we never forget to help those who are where we were, Robert completed. That was the legacy they wanted to leave. Not one of material wealth, but of active compassion, of love that transforms, of second chances that truly change lives. And everything had begun with a desperate woman asking for food scraps, and a man who decided to give much more than was asked, who decided to give dignity, opportunity, and love. And as the stars shone over them that night, 3 people slept serenely, secure in each other's love, grateful for the miracle of having found each other. A pregnant beggar who asked for scraps and received a feast. A lonely millionaire who offered help and received purpose. A baby who could have grown up with nothing and grew up surrounded by love. 3 lives. 1 story. A happy ending that was, in truth, a blessed beginning. And so we finish the journey of Elena and Robert. A story of second chances, true love, and chosen family. A story that reminds us it's never too late to start over, that compassion can change the world, and that the best things in life come when we least expect them. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment. Gratitude. Also share. Have you had or given a second chance that changed everything? Hit like. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that will move and inspire you. And share this video with someone who needs to believe that better days are coming. Because in the end, we are all Elena at some point in life, needing help. And we can all be Robert reaching out to someone. The choice is ours. Thank you for being here. Until the next story.